24/7. Check us out on YouTube, Facebook, and X. And for the premier sports talk experience, tap into our Roku channel. Start your mornings with Mac and Jack covering all the weekend sports action. Then pour a cup and enjoy all the sports you can drink on the Coffee and Sports podcast. At midday, talk sports from east to west on the Coast to Coast podcast. Followed at night by some hot girl talk with Prim and Proper Sports featuring Sonia Pearson. Talk boxing on the Gloved Fist. Yankee fans tune in for Start Spreading the News. And there's more on the College Sports Huddle and Sports Scope with Robert Butler. And that's just a sampling. There are 20 podcasts in all and 70 weekly shows giving us a 3.4-star viewer rating. To find us on Roku TV, search for National Streaming Sports on the Roku search bar. Click on the logo and you're in. For laptops, mobile phones, and tablets, download the Roku app. National Streaming Sports, live and on demand, sports talk for America.
Football season is here, and SeatGeek is my go-to for buying tickets. Now, with SeatGeek, every single ticket is backed with their buyer guarantee. We've all had plans change, and when you can't make it to the big game, SeatGeek has you covered. They're the only ticketer that allows you to return your tickets ahead of the event for credit with SeatGeek swaps. So when things come up, I know that my tickets won't go to waste. So what are you waiting for? Download the SeatGeek app to maximize your possibilities.
Good morning, everyone, and let's take that overlay. That's what it's called, up off the screen, so you can see Jack's lovely face as we get this going here today on the Sports Memory Show. A little quick sports updates before we get to the topics. The two individuals, Yankee fans at the World Series, who ended up grabbing Mookie Betts' glove and arm. I mean, they got a hold of him. As Jack pointed out, they will be suspended indefinitely from attending any MLB game. Deshaun Watson is having another operation on the same ACL that he had injured before. Aaron Glenn declines an interview with the Patriots. Then we'll get into a lot of this on Monday. Ben Johnson has no interest in the Jets head coaching job. And, of course, the biggest news of all, Ohio State beats Texas 28-14. They scored 14 in the fourth, unanswered by Texas, including a strip sack and a score at the end of the game. Ohio State is a tough team. It's going to be a tough matchup for Notre Dame. You got to be able to run the ball against Ohio State. Go ahead, Jack.
You can't run the ball against Ohio State. That's the problem. They're too tough against the run. And when, Texas was down 7 points late in the game, first down and goal from the 1 yard line. That's the time they could have passed because on first down, because everyone feels on the Ohio State line, they're all, tensed up against the run. But they try running right up the middle and they get stopped. They get stuffed predictably. And then they run a sweep on the next play. And with all, it's so complicated, the offenses. They learn so much. But this you never see, guys. If you're running a sweep in that situation, second down, and it's a hopeless situation, and you're running back and throw the ball away. Why doesn't he just throw the ball in the end zone? I mean, over the end zone, just throw it away. At least you'll have third down and goal from the 1 yard line, but he gets hit for 7 yard loss. And now it's third and goal from the 8 yard line, and that changes everything at that point. And then, of course, Ewers got stripped of the ball. It got returned for a touchdown. But, guys, I guess we're on the game now. I know it's a memory show, but the game
Right, that's fine.
But the thing that really killed me, 29 seconds left, and you give up a 75-yard touchdown on a screen pass. Everyone knew it was going to be a screen pass. They weren't going to take a chance and try to throw 25 yards to midfield. They were going to run a conservative play, hoping they could break a 15, 20-yard gain, and then somehow get into field goal range after that. How do you go all out on a pass rush and leave yourself open, on the screen pass to give, the receiver like the space he had?
Well, you're being a Monday quarterback, Jack, or a Monday coach. If I'm first and goal, I put my elephant backfield in there. I put my big guys in there. I expect to get the ball in the end zone. I don't care how good Ohio State is. That's what you expect to do. The sweep was a stupid call. I would have did the middle again. I don't know why you're trying to run wide. That makes no sense. But I would have definitely tried that middle again. In fact, I might have tried it 4 times. This is who wants it more. It boils down to who wants the game more. And it looked like Ohio State wanted the game more than Texas. And I want to throw Quint Ewers a little bit of credit. He played pretty well. But as you said, it's hard to run against Ohio State. Notre Dame with Love is going to have a big game. Their quarterback can run for Notre Dame. He's going to have to. If they can't run, they're losing. It's that simple.
But Texas first and goal. You mentioned Ewers, okay? Why wasn't Arch Manning in first and goal? If you're planning to run 4 plays, Arch Manning, even if he's not running the ball, they know he represents more of a threat than Ewers, and they're going to be more concerned about him. The Ohio State defense, they did it early in the game. They had a situation from midfield, okay, 4th and 1, and they put in Arch Manning to run that.
Which he almost fumbled.
He nearly fumbled, but the idea he ran for first down, and they put him in those situations because he's more mobile. Unless they were seriously thinking of passing the ball, why was Ewers in 4th and 1?
Jack,
I mean, first and goal. I'm sorry, first and goal. I mean, at the end of the game.
I mean, they could have done that, and maybe I don't know why, Jack. Maybe because they thought they may have to throw the ball. I don't know. I just know if you're in first and goal from the 1 and you can't get in the end zone, then maybe you deserve to lose. Maybe you deserve to lose that game.
And on that 3rd and 8, I got to put a spotlight on the right tackle. That right tackle just totally whiffed on the block that led to that strip sack. Yeah,
it's true. It's true. I mean, again, Ohio State to me was just a better team. I think Ohio State, I've been saying all along, should win the national championship. Notre Dame is a very opportunistic defense. If Ohio State, they'll force Ohio State making something's going to happen. They're going to get an interception. They're going to get a fumble. Again, if Notre Dame can run the ball, even if it's a little bit, even if it's enough, the defense, again, I think the Notre Dame defense will hold up somewhat to Ohio State. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. But listen, you got to be able to run the ball, and it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. Ohio State knows they're going to try and run, so they're going to be stacking the line. And Notre Dame's quarterback is not a throwing quarterback; he's a running.
Guys, I'm not a good handicapper when it comes to college football, and I didn't have a good year in the NFL either this year. Hasn't been a good year, but I think Ohio State, Notre Dame. I think you'll be able to go to sleep at halftime knowing who the national champion is. I think Ohio State will be up 3 touchdowns by that point.
Wow.
I don't necessarily disagree with you, but it's one game. Whoever's the best team that day.
Yeah, but also yesterday's game, you look at it and you say, well, Ohio State won by a couple of touchdowns. But hypothetically, had Texas scored at the end of the game, there's a good chance they would have gone for the 2-point conversion. And imagine they make the 2-point conversion. Now, Ohio State is going to have the ball back with less than 4 minutes to go in the game, having to get into field goal range. Just think of that. So that's how close the game was in reality. But we think of, Ewers getting stripped of the ball, it being returned for TD. Now we see a 2-touchdown margin at the end, and we think, Ohio State dominated. They just did this or that. But it really was a very close, nip and tuck game.
Texas couldn't run the ball. Simple. They couldn't run. Not even the goal line. They couldn't run the ball, period. I think the leading rusher had 46 yards. So,
yeah.
Good morning, Rick. Rick, glad to have you aboard. Rich Sherlock is, we love having him. He's very loyal. He watches all the shows, really. So we love having Rick aboard. So let's start the sport memories. We're going to let James go first. He's got a NFL player from the past was unbelievable. Easily could play today, and a record breaker, Hall of Famer. There you go, James. Take it away.
Yeah, gentlemen, Dick Night Train Lane, believe it or not, is one of my favorite players. And I didn't even watch a game live, of course. I wasn't even born during that time. But as I told you earlier off the air, I used to watch like sport. It's funny using the way. I used to watch a lot of Steve Sable's highlights of players, and he was one of those guys. And when I first saw him, the highlights of this guy, he just instantly became one of my favorites, man, especially as a DB. Because coming up, when I played football, in middle school, high school, I always wanted to play offense. I never wanted to play any type of defense. And believe it or not, with all the records that Night Train Lane has as a defensive player, he also wanted to play wide receiver. And he did play some wide receiver early on. And when he tried out for the Rams, he tried out as a wide receiver first, but they switched him over back to DB. But let's go back to some of his beginnings when he started in high school. Dick came from some humble beginnings, believe it or not. I was reading that he was abandoned by his parents, by his mom, and he was adopted. And he ended up being a good high school football player, but he wasn't recruited at all. And after high school, Dick, him and his mom reconciled because he was in Texas in Prairie View. He moved to Iowa and went and played at a JUCO, junior college, Scotts Bluff College in Omaha, Nebraska. In Scotts Bluff, Nebraska. And he played both DB and wide receiver there. So he did well, but again, not enough to move up and go anywhere. So he decided to join the Army. He joined the Army, and I've always heard this. I had uncles that played sports or that were in the military, and they told me that the Army, they had boxing, they had football, they did all these things back in the day. And he played football for them, and he was at Fort Ord. I've never even heard of that Fort, believe it or not. Maybe you have, Mac, back in the day, or Jack. But anyway, he played at Fort Ord, and he played football for them, and he played wide receiver the whole time. As a matter of fact, one year in 1951, he had 18 touchdowns as a receiver. And so after he was done, he moved to California. He goes there and he's working for some airline plant. And he decides to try for the LA Rams. And he not only tried out, he made the team. But this is where the origin of his name came from, the Night Train nickname, the moniker. It wasn't because of what you think, maybe because of his play on the field. Because in 1952, the song Night Train by Jimmy Forrest came out. And one of the guys, Tom Fears, would actually play this. He would play it like, every night in the hall, and they find Dick out there dancing to the music. And so he would call him Night Train, and it stuck. So it had nothing to do with him, what he did on the field. And in college and in the pros, in his early scrimmages, he was known for his viciousness as a hitter. And because I remember watching the 100 all time, Jerry Glanville was quoted as saying that Dick told him, he said, "Jerry, look, it's not a good hit in the league if you're not hitting above the eyebrow." So I'm paraphrasing that, but hitting above the eyebrow. This guy was vicious. I saw some of the highlights, and he would tear people's heads off, man. And he's the reason that some of the rule changes came. When he was hitting guys, taking the helmets off, they changed rules for that. He clotheslined guys. They made rules for that. And then he using his elbow, taking his elbow and hitting guys against the head, and they changed rules for that. But that being said, in 1952, when he made the team, he played a full 12-game season, and he got the record for 14 interceptions, which still stands to this day. And that's incredible because you got guys that can get 11, 12 interceptions in the season, and they're doing it in 16 and 17 games. Now, mind you, the rules have changed. You can't do the things that he was doing. I mean, you can only press at 5 yards, but still, for somebody who's in the game and he's got 12 games and he's got that many interceptions, that was still impressive. But and even saying that, he got all those interceptions in that first year, and he wasn't even recognized for any All-Pros or any Pro Bowl nods at all. And so he go on to play. He played another season for the Rams, and he wanted a raise. If I was making $4,500, I would want a raise too. So they offered him an additional $2,500. He didn't like that, as most players wouldn't, and so he asked to be traded. And he was traded to the Chicago Cardinals. Another fun fact that I learned, that the Cardinals didn't start in Arizona; they started in Chicago. And so he played for them for 6 seasons and got 30 interceptions. And of course he was getting All-Pro nods at this time. And he was traded again to the Detroit Lions lastly, and he played 6 seasons there as well and 21 interceptions. And in that year, I think he was playing for he's playing for the Lions when he intercepted Johnny Unitas. That's one specific game in his first season there, and it went for 80 yards for a touchdown. So the guy had speed, he had like the will to like knock guys' heads off. I'm not saying that's a good thing, but I mean, he was a tough tackler, and it led to a great career. All in all, he played 14 seasons in the league. He had 7 All-Pro first team nods, 3 second team. He's in the Arizona Ring of Honor. He's in the Pride of the Lions. He's led the league in interceptions twice, and he's got 68 total interceptions. At the time of his retirement, believe it or not, that was only second in the all time, and now it's 4th. And man, it's just a great, impressive individual on the field. He's again, of the top 100 players, he's number 30, and so that tells you what his peers thinks of him and what other people should be thinking of him. Because I know a lot of guys my age or younger don't know who this guy is. I just happen to know because I love football and I love history of the game, and so I just happen to see who he is. But I'm not a person that can say that I've watched games live. Maybe Jack, you might have seen him, play against some of these teams. And no shot at Jack. I'm just saying that I know I hear a lot of Jack saying that he's watched a lot of these games and stuff like that. And so, impressive football player. And he wasn't even a first ballot Hall of Famer. When he finished in 65 with the Lions, he didn't get into Hall of Fame until 1974. And so with that said, I mean, like you said, Matt, could he have played in this era? I think so, especially for a guy that played wide receiver and he was really fast and he showed that he had success on the other side of the ball. As a matter of fact, when he played for the Cardinals, a guy named Ogden Compton, a quarterback for them, he threw him a touchdown for 98 yards. And at the time, it was the second longest, well, not a touchdown, but a reception. He caught it for 98 yards. And so it just showed his athleticism that he had on both sides of the ball. But yeah, I think he could play in this league, or he could play in any era. I mean, it just shows he's in the top 75th, 50th anniversary and 100.
Yes, he did. He did. Jack and him, they both took algebra together. But look, Night Train Lane, a great NFL player. Of course, the question is always, could the older players, Jimmy Browns, and of course he could, and some of the quarterbacks play today? And with the rule changes, I think a lot of them could. The question I always come back with is, could the new players, the Tom Brady's, the Peyton Mannings, play back then when the rules were a lot lax, right? I mean, I don't know if you ever saw the picture of Y.A. Tittle after he played the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think he was sacked like 8 or 10 times, something ridiculous. And he was on his knees at the end of the game. Looked like he was in a war. Looked, they just beat the hell out of him. And that's the way they played back then. So never mind getting hit with the helmet in the chin or your knee. I mean, they went out to almost hurt you. They knew if they got a quarterback knocked out of the game or a running back, their chances were better to win, and that's the way they played back then. So that's why when somebody asked me, well, could Jimmy Brown play today? Well, could one of these running backs, could Milton play back then? Could Mixon play back then? I don't know.
They
probably could.
The great players today would have been great back.
I think they could have been.
Derrick Henry would have been great.
I think they could have been, Jack, but I'm just talking about the physicality back then. A lot different than today. And that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, well, the quarterback position, I mean, keep this in mind, the Bradys, the Mannings, they didn't have the rules in place that you have today to protect them. So they got beat up a bit too. Let's not forget that. But yeah, I agree. They would have, the blindside hits of the past, they would, and then the players allowed to pile on the quarterback to try to knock him out of the game. So if you had to drop today's quarterbacks into, the past, they might have, they'd have certain success, obviously, with the athleticism, but like a Lamar Jackson who would run and pick up like 25 yards and then hit the deck. And then the guy would do a forward roll on his back a moment later, and the whistle wouldn't be called. He would be like stunned, and figuring, I don't want to play in this era. Get me back to where I am. That's a distinct possibility. The skill positions like wide receiver, the receivers of the past couldn't do what the guys did today. The acrobatic catches, keeping your feet in bounds. You saw none of that in the past. None of that. So I don't want to hear that the receivers matched up. Could they have adjusted? Perhaps. I mean, Rice.
Steve Largent was like that.
Steve Largent to a degree. Was Jerry Rice really like that? Rice. Yeah.
Lynn Swann.
And Lynn Swann, yes, I would agree with that. Jerry Rice was the epitome of what really started. But I was going to say Jerry Rice, but you're right, Mac. Lynn Swann, I watched a lot of his highlights. He was like a ballerina.
Took ballet.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, the only thing I want to say about the wide receivers, you saw what happened to those wide receivers going over the middle. There's no defenseless wide receiver back then. I mean, you're going to get cracked, and they knew they were going to get cracked. So, I mean, all I say, Jack, I'm not saying that they couldn't have played back then, but man, would they had to adjust because, you saw Joe Namath getting his helmet ripped off. I mean, that's the way they played. It was very, very tough back then. And that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying Tom Brady couldn't play because he's a big guy, but you're going to hit him in the knee. He's going to complain about it. No, that's the way it is.
He would have just been the best quarterback in the NFL at that point. I don't want to hear.
I would agree with that.
Mac, you mentioned running backs, whether or not they can play back then. I would say a player like Adrian Peterson would be in his era. In Adrian Peterson's era, would be like the Jim Brown of his era. I think
the running backs would have an easier time, right? Because the running backs, you get hit being a running back all the time in the NFL anyway. It's the wide receivers, it's the quarterbacks. The defensive backs would have loved playing back then. I'll tell you, they would have loved, the linebackers would have loved playing back then. But anyway, Night Train Lane, one of the greatest of all time. Defensive backs, no question about it. Jack is going to do something of a person he did watch, in fact, lifelong fan of. But there's a lot of questions about this first Super Bowl between the AFL and NFL that I'm going to hit him with. And I've done it before, so he probably knows what's coming. But Jack, why don't you talk a little bit about the real?
Yeah, I'm old enough that I've watched every Super Bowl. When I was a kid, I remember Super Bowl I. Even having a thing. We had a cousins club where I don't know why they set the date during the Super Bowl, but a few of us guys, got in the room and we watched the game. It was the AFL against the NFL. And we were AFL fans. They were the adults. I was a kid at the time. And the AFL was 8 years old. And it wasn't like the AFC, NFC. I don't want to hear that nonsense. These were two distinct different entities, two distinct rivals. And the AFL was considered an annoyance to the NFL, a bit of a threat because they were the upstart league. they were providing some competition in a different league. And I don't want to hear again anyone thinking about USFL and bringing that up. It had nothing to do with that. This was a legitimate thing. The only sports league that compared competition-wise a little bit, you could say the ABA and the NBA. When the ABA was getting good players and coming up, the NBA considered them a little bit of a threat. That's why they absorbed the ABA. And the NFL decided they were going to absorb the AFL rather than them having their own league. They were going to take a few teams, put them in the NFL, and settle things that way. But the NFL was the established league, and they looked down at the AFL. They even wanted to label it as a Mickey Mouse league, this and that. But the AFL was getting really good players, much like the SFL got originally with the Jim Kellys, the Herschel Walkers, the Steve Youngs. So the AFL, they made the big signing of Joe Namath. He elected to go with the Jets instead of the St. Louis Cardinals because he was offered this like mega contract. But again, the NFL had a condescending view of the AFL. And finally, they, were having a championship game. They had decided they were probably going to merge, at some point, meaning the AFL would lose their identity and become part of the NFL. And that's what led to Super Bowl I. It was the Kansas City Chiefs against the Green Bay Packers. And the Packers were already like a legendary team under Vince Lombardi. They were like adding to their legend. And you had the AFL and NFL championship game. The AFL Kansas City Chiefs won the AFL championship game, beating the Buffalo Bills 31-7. Chiefs had really good players. Len Dawson was the quarterback, Otis Taylor wide receiver, Myles Garrett running back, Buck Buchanan, defensive end, Willie Lanier linebacker. I mean, they were stacked with some great talent on that team. And then you had the Packers, all their legendary players, Bart Starr, Paul Hornung, Jim Taylor, Herb Adderley, Ray Nitschke, Forrest Gregg, on and on and on. But the Packers survived a little bit of a scam, the NFL championship game. They had the game in hand against a great Cowboy team. And Dallas, had this outstanding talent, Bob Lilly, Bob Hayes, et cetera. I could start naming the players. So the Packers, with 4 minutes to go up 34-20. There's no 2-point conversions, and they line up for the extra point to kick it. That'll put them 15 points up, and the game's all over then. But the kick gets blocked. So it gives the Cowboys a tiny chance with 4 minutes to go. They got to get 2 touchdowns to force overtime. Don Meredith immediately hits an 80-yard bomb for touchdown. Now it's 7 points. The Cowboy defense holds the Packers. Packers punt. The Cowboys take it all the way down the field, and they have 1st and goal on the 2-yard line. It reminds of last night's Ohio State-Texas game. The Packer defense holds firm. Cowboys don't score on 4th down. Meredith just, as he's being tackled, flings it in the end zone. It gets intercepted. And the Packers in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs. Packers were only a 14-point favorite. Okay, on reflection, I think to myself, that's all. Because the NFL was considered so vastly superior. The game's in the LA Coliseum. And man, talk about a demand for tickets. There was none. There was so many empty seats in the stands. I mean, it didn't have the hoopla. Even the halftime show, you had marching bands. You didn't have to boring. Marching bands gave people a chance to do other stuff, Sure. And it was like $40,000 a commercial. And they couldn't decide, the AFL and NFL, part of the negotiation to televise the game. CBS television was the NFL channel. NBC was the AFL channel. So they both telecast the darn game. People could turn to, whatever they want. And I kind of remember we watched it on NBC, and one of my relatives, excuse me, one of my relatives said, "Oh, we're gonna watch it on the AFL channel," but I was so brainwashed into thinking the NFL was so superior. Okay, even though I was a big AFL fan, rooting hard for them, I remember the opening kickoff, and if my mind doesn't deceive me, all these years later, you could look this up. I swear I haven't Googled it. It's just from memory. The opening kickoff went to the Packers, Elijah Pitts, and he returned it to the 23-yard line. And I remember turning to one of the relatives and saying, "Did you think they'd be able to even tackle them all together and bring them down?" Like I'm asking, I'm just figuring, the Packers are so much better just tackling these guys. But the Chiefs played well in the first half. They actually outgained the Packers by a little bit. And the Packers were only up 14-10. And everyone was giddy if you're an AFL fan because you're showing you could compete. Even if we lose the game, even if we lose by 10 points, if we're competing, we show we belong. But early in the third quarter, Len Dawson throws an interception to Willie Wood, gets returned to the 4-yard line. Packers score. Packers win 35-10. They totally shut down the Chief offense. And I'm going to tell you, there's an underappreciation of those Packer teams when we talk about the greatest of all time. We talked at that time about them being the greatest of all time. They won the NFL championship the year before Super Bowl I. And then they won Super Bowl I, and they won it the next year. So in reality, they three-peated in the Super Bowl era. We're talking about the Chiefs being the first one, but the Packers, it just wasn't called the Super Bowl the year before it was the Super Bowl. Okay? But when you think of that Chief team, the same team comes back 3 years later, all the same core players. And they win the Super Bowl 3 years later, and they beat the Minnesota Vikings handily to win the Super Bowl. And that's the team that the Packers beat clearly. And even the following year, the Packers beat a 13-1 Raider team who had their core players who were outstanding for years. Yep. But the thing about it was, it meant so much to the NFL there because they had to keep their little brother in place, which they certainly did. But before the game, Joe Namath, you hear about his guarantee in Super Bowl III. What's forgotten is what he said 2 years before Super Bowl I. Joe Namath was obviously a big AFL guy. That's his league he was proud of. They asked him, who do you pick between the Packers and the Chiefs? And he wouldn't make a prediction, but this is what he said. Kansas City's a good team. Green Bay's a great team. The Packers never make a mistake. Kansas City makes a mistake once in a while. And that summed it all. And Namath nailed it. It's Super Bowl I.
What I remember about the AFL back then, and even the beginning of the AFC, it was a fun league. It was more passing in the AFL with. You had Namath, you had Hadel, you had Daryl LaMonica. I mean,
the Wild Bomber, yeah.
Yes, and they would throw the ball all over the place. So it was a real fun league to watch if you were watching football coming up and you just wanted to see fun. Where the NFC was mainly ground and pound. That's what they did. I mean, the Packers mainly ground. Now, listen, in that Super Bowl, that first championship game, they opened it up. I mean, Bart Starr's throwing touchdown passes. I think it was McAfee.
Max McGee. Well, the funny thing, Max McGee was known as being a playboy. Him and Paul Hornung went out the night before. McGee had a hangover because McGee had been playing very little. He thought he might not even get in the game. He didn't even expect that. So I think it was Boyd Dowler, their other receiver, got injured right off the bat early in the game. And Vince Lombardi says, McGee, you're in. And he's like shocked. He's in no condition to play. He didn't anticipate getting in. And he catches 7 passes, 2 touchdown passes. You could argue he should have been the MVP, but they gave it to Bart Starr. And McGee was, this single guy. Bart Starr was a religious married guy, family man. And McGee said afterward, they used to give out a car, Sport Magazine. They used to make a big deal over the car they gave out. Imagine that today. Someone gives out a car, the athletes wouldn't blink even. They could buy a few of their own, the higher price guys very easily. But McGee says, why are they giving the car to a nice family man like Bart Starr? Like he could have used it a lot more like this sporty car.
And folks, whether you're watching now or later, do you ever get a chance to watch one of those touchdown passes McGee caught? Unbelievable. The guy tipped it to himself. It was one-handed. I mean, it was a hell of a catch for a guy that was, hurting a little bit after that night out. But listen, Green Bay, very, 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 very disciplined team. Very disciplined. Lombardi, of course, had some military coaching he went to, like a lot of great coaches. Very disciplined team. They played the ball. They were regimented. Great. You can talk about the Steelers. You can talk about a lot of the teams, and even to the Patriots and the Chiefs today. The Packers were unbelievable. This team, they were a one for all and all for one. And the star might have been Paul Hornung because he was a kind of a playboy outside the locker room.
No, at that point, no, he wasn't a star. I wouldn't say they had any particular star on the team.
I know
great players, Hall of Fame.
Yeah, but Jeff, what I'm saying.
He wasn't one of the better running backs in the league.
I'm saying he came from Notre Dame. They called him the Golden Boy. He was a quarterback. Yeah. He got a lot of pub when he went to the Green Bay Packers, and he wasn't even the main running back. Tim Taylor was. But anyway, great job, Jack. Yeah, that was the Chiefs. Wow. They really had a great team. Go ahead, James.
So before that merger and before the championship, before the first Super Bowl, didn't the Packers win like 5 out of 6 championships or something like that?
Yeah, they wound up winning. Yeah, what was it, 5 and 7 years?
5 and 7 years. Yeah, that's incredible. All you're doing is merging, and you're changing the names. It doesn't change the game. These guys, that just says a lot more about the team.
Yeah,
like you said.
Well, look at the Chiefs. If they win the Super Bowl this year, look at their run that we could talk about. One game makes so much of a difference on the legacy. It might seem unfair, but it's incredible. Frank Gifford, who was a broadcaster, at the time, who knew Vince Lombardi very well, because Vince Lombardi was a coordinator with the Giants when Gifford played. Gifford had his arm around Lombardi while he was interviewing him, and he said later he was shaking before the game. He was actually shaking. That's how nervous Vince Lombardi was. Imagine had the Chiefs won that game. The Lombardi legacy wouldn't quite be what it is. And conversely, had the New England Patriots beaten the Giants, just stopped them on the last drive of the game, just one possession, as little as one possession, and they nearly intercepted the ball during the Giants' final drive, we would be talking about the Patriots maybe as the greatest single sports team of all time. Perhaps we would be talking. They would be certainly very strongly in the discussion. We'd say, wow, they went 19-0 or whatever this season, didn't lose. But they lost the game. So if we talk about top 10 NFL teams of all time, maybe that Patriot team makes the top 10, but they probably come 7th or 8th as opposed to clearly being number 1.
Yeah, definitely. Funny game. I'm going to talk a little baseball here. I'm going to talk about Louis Tiant. Now, I know Louis Tiant from the Red Sox, right? But he was a pitcher for a couple teams before he got there. He began with the Cleveland Indians in the farm system. His last year before they brought him, he went 15-1. So the Cleveland Indians bring him up. In his rookie year, he finishes 10-4 with a 2.83 ERA. In 68, he's 21-9 with a 1.60 ERA. 19 strikeouts in 10 innings against the Twins. His ERA was only second that year to Bob Gibson's 1.12. So right off the bat, Louis Tiant is coming in with the Cleveland Indians and just tearing it up. He was a mainly a fastball pitcher at the time with a little bit of junk. So in 1971, the Braves signed Tiant, and he gets hurt. So he starts kind of reinventing himself. And James, I don't know if you've ever seen Louis Tiant pitch, but Louis Tiant's motion and his windup was second to none. The guy would actually turn his back to home plate in his windup, like he's looking into center field. That's how he pitched. Well, the batter's sitting there. He doesn't know when the ball's coming. He doesn't know what he's throwing. He's looking at Louis Tiant's back, who's turned all the way. And then he comes with his pitch. It was really the first hesitation pitch, right? But you had to wait. You didn't know when he was coming. He just turned his back, and when he's coming, he said he did that because his velocity dropped off. He was throwing more junk at the time, and it was easier for him to hold the ball. So in 1972, he starts regaining his old form. Now he's with the Red Sox. He goes 15-6 with 6 shutouts, a 1.91 ERA. He wins 20 games in 73. He wins 22 games in 1974. 75, even with back problems, he has 18 wins. So they're playing the championship, the AL championship against the Twins. He allows only 3 hits and 1 run against that A's offense. So they end up winning 7-1. That year they go on now we're talking 1975 now. They go on to play the Big Red Machine in one of the best World Series ever. Tiant pitches the first game. He shuts out the Reds 6-0. So the Red Sox go up 1-0 right away. And, your number one pitcher did that. Hey, maybe the Red Sox win this World Series. Maybe they break that Ruth curse. So he pitched a 5-hit shutout thing. He goes to win. He pitched to a win in Game 4, throwing 173 pitches. They pull you out at 100 now. So he pitches. He throws 173 pitches. There was no decision. Red Sox did win the game. So Tiant went on to 21. He ended up going to the Yankees. I know Jack remembers that. He ended up having 21-17 with the Yankees in 79 and 80. He finished with the Pirates and the Angels, and of course now he's getting older and he's falling off. But his career record was 229 and 172, lifetime career ERA 3.30, 2,416 strikeouts. He ends up a 3-time All-Star, 68, 74, and 76. He's a 2-time AL ERA leader, and of course he's in the Boston Hall of Fame. I think he's in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Yeah. So he's one of those.
It's funny with Louis Tiant. I mean, decades later, things come back to you. Like when he made his debut, I remember, as a kid, it creating a buzz. But it was funny when he came to the Yankees, he did a commercial for hot dogs, okay? And he had this accent, and maybe remember this, Mac. He'd say, "It's good to be with a wiener."
Yes,
I mean, it sounded like with the Yankees. He's the hot dog. It's good to be with a wiener. Yes. It was great. People loved it.
He was a fun guy. I mean, an incredible pitcher. And he, came from the Cuban leagues. A lot of the players came from there. A lot of the Hispanic people came from there.
Was he on the ballot for the Hall of Fame? I'm not saying he's a Hall of Fame. I'm not saying that at all. But,
no, he died recently. I'm trying to think of when he passed away, but he died pretty recently, and I don't think he's on the ballot, Jack. I really don't. I think he's close. He's one of those players that you wouldn't be upset if he got in the Hall of Fame. Yeah.
He's one of those, very good players who really comes a little short. But I think we're living in the Hall of Fame era where it becomes the Hall of the Very Good as well.
Right. Normally it's, you're not going to get 3,000 strikeouts anymore. I mean, the way they control pitching, it's going to be hard for them to get to 300 wins now because the way they do pitching now, they pull them out, put them in relievers. So maybe the 2,500 is going to be the new one, or 2,300 is going to be.
It's how we look at things. For example, like some people tried to make a case for Keith Hernandez. He's not that close. but the guy won 11 Gold Gloves. Isn't defense a big part of things? So you mean to tell me he was the best defensive first baseman in baseball for 11 years? And that's not considered? And in the past, first base was underrated as far as defense goes. That's where they'd stick someone who couldn't play the outfield anymore. But that never made any sense. Look at all the hot shots hit down first base and everything a first baseman has to do. It's a very important position. Every position is important, but I think, it's a mindset. And you mentioned a good point with Louis Tiant, the pitch count. Where do these managers get this 100-pitch count? Let a pitcher pitch as long as he's effective and he's feeling okay and he's not pitching hurt. If they throw a lot of pitches, change your rotation a little. Give them a little extra rest. Give them an additional day off rest until the next start. It's like etched in stone. Everyone has to go on this day. I mean, heck with your fifth starter. He'll adjust.
I got a couple things for you. First, maybe if he didn't throw 179 pitches and they won, maybe he could have gone Game 7, right? Maybe Tiant could have pitched Game 7.
What game was this?
He won in, let's see, 4. Game 4, he threw 173 pitches. So maybe if he throws less pitches, maybe the Red Sox
Game
win.
7, that wasn't a situation for him to come in on where they lost to Cincinnati. They could have used him if need be. Bill Lee was the starter. The Red Sox were leading 3-0 in the 7th inning.
Right.
They're not going to bring. Then the 2-run homers hit. They tied the 8th inning, score a run in the top of the 9th. It's that type of thing.
Yeah. I agree with that. So Tiant had a shot to vote into Hall of Fame after his playing days were over. He only earned 30.9% of the vote from the baseball writers. When he debuted in 1988 on the ballot, he debuted on the ballot in 1988, but he never got the support. 14 years of eligibility, and of course he's passed away now. So,
well, they have a veterans committee. There's a certain amount of politics involved. Harold Baines got in. I know James, you're familiar with him. Very good outfielder with Chicago. He had 283. Very good, Harold Baines. But that's where it stopped. Never great. Always very, very good. But the owner, Bill Veeck, who he played for, liked Harold Baines a lot. And he had a lot of influence with the Veterans Committee. And as did Tony La Russa, who was Harold Baines' manager. And they would be talking to the other guys on the committee to get their boy in. And that's what happened.
Politics. All politics.
I mean, it wasn't like Harold Baines was completely unworthy. Matt, did you consider Harold Baines a Hall of Famer?
No.
No, but a very good player.
Great. I would have him on my team. I want him on my team.
Anyone would. He's a heck of a good player.
Yes.
To talk about a Hall of Famer?
I would say no. But that's just me. I mean, I don't know.
It's
sort of like Louis Tiant, right?
Yeah.
The Louis Tiant, if he didn't get injured, maybe he has a couple more years. He has a couple more 20 wins, but that didn't happen. So, I mean, it's all up to, you got the Veterans Committee. It's all up to the writers who kind of blow my mind sometimes because I don't know why they're voting the way they vote or why they don't vote the way they vote. And of course, it's you don't know who they are. So it's really hard to understand them sometimes. Who gets in and who gets all the votes and who don't get the votes, and it's nuts. But Baines was a great player. Like I said, he'd be on my team, no problem. But to say he's a great player, I don't know.
Since we're on baseball now, the Pete Alonso situation with the Mets, you talk about legacy and all, and it seems like the Mets are willing to sign Alonso, maybe give him what they offered him before, like $158 million for 7 years. He can still get that. But Alonso, he's only something like 24 homers short of being the all-time franchise leader on the Mets. Then wouldn't you think legacy would be important? Be the all-time leader in all these categories? I mean, it would build his, just it would make him legendary, within a franchise at least, if he did that.
I don't think
So then
teams care
perhaps he
about
should be the franchise and be in the franchise Hall of Fame, but not the league Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
No, it wouldn't be that. But there's a certain good feeling like you're the all-time leader with the team.
I don't think teams care about that anymore. I mean, you look at.
I don't think players care about that.
I don't think anybody cares as much as we do. To be honest with you, I think the players want the money. I think the owners and are going to move people and see what they, what you're going to sign for, what they think you're worth. It's a lot different than it was, Jack. Right? I mean, we loved a lot of players played for the team the whole career. But
These
changed a lot.
The timing's got to be, not delayed, because this is a Louis T on comment by Richard, and that ship has sailed.
Yeah. Well, that's all right. We can pop it up. Richard can say whatever he wants.
Yeah. Another thing on this, I want to get your input on this. The Tom Brady situation. Okay, Tom Brady is a minority owner of the Raiders. I don't know how much of a minority owner, how much of a stake he has.
I think about 10.
Mark Davis, has consulted him at the very least. And you get the feeling, that Tom Brady will have a lot of influence on the next Raider coach. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I don't know for sure, so I would quickly backtrack if need be. He's an analyst for Fox. Something about the conflict here, how big a conflict is it? Should he be doing the games for Fox? Should it be either or?
I read something, and of course it's not factual, but the feeling is that maybe the NFL may say something to him that maybe he's got to pick one or the other. I don't know how much.
They should have said it before he became the Raider minority owner.
Listen,
the time to talk about it.
I don't disagree with you, Jack. I don't disagree with you. I don't know if they thought. Look at Magic Johnson's minority. There's a lot of minority owners out there and teams. Maybe they don't have maybe they just do that for an investment or whatever. Brady's very, very serious about everything he does. And I think he's very serious about the Raiders, making the Raiders a good team because he's part owner. I think that's the way Brady's naturally wired. So, if you're going to be talking to coaches, and I know he's got relationships, not only with Bill Belichick, a very strong relationship with Bill Belichick, but a lot of head coaches out there, right? I mean, he's played against him. He's probably talked to him. He's probably talked to him many times. So is that fair? I don't know.
I do think it's a bit of a conflict of interest, though. If you're going to focus on the Raiders and your organization and what the ins and outs of that, I mean, if you have some say of anything, how do you even sit in the booth and not have some bit of conflict of interest as a analyst? I don't know. I think he should focus on one, and he's probably going to be better. I mean, he's gotten better as an analyst, but he's not great by any means. But he gets a lot of reviews. He's got a lot of ties into Fox. I mean, if you look at Fox Sports, there's Brady plastered all over it. I mean, if you look on .com, he's everywhere. So I don't know. I don't know how that works.
They're paying him a lot of money. Fox is paying him a lot of money. And,
well, they're paying him $37.5 million. He had $375 million for 10 years, but it's more than what he does in the booth. I think he would schmooze sponsors, go to certain parties, extended value, outside of him just calling the games. I got to believe that's part of the deal. And it's a sweetheart deal to get that type of money.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And, I think Davis is an idiot, right? Davis is running his mouth, and I don't think Davis should be saying he's going to help us in the draft. help work with our quarterback. Being. I mean, he's just running off to the mouth. Why are you saying anything? Just shut up.
Well, why? No. Why? It's okay. Says it. Brady's a minority owner.
I understand, but
it doesn't always work out. Sometimes we could put our faith in someone. Like when the Broncos got John Elway. And in fairness to Elway, the Broncos went to 2 Super Bowls with Elway overseeing the operation and won 1. So even though the perception is that John Elway failed, he didn't. But where Elway was lacking, outside of Peyton Manning, who he recruited, who was already a Hall of Fame quarterback, he couldn't draft a good quarterback.
But John Elway wasn't a broadcaster for NBC or Fox or anybody else. Tom Brady is. So why draw that? All I'm saying, Jack, is why draw that attention? Don't even draw the attention. Just if he's going to do it good. But why go out on the air at a press conference or to the media and say, hey, he's going to help us? Why are you even doing that?
It'll boost the organization. You don't want to keep it quiet. You got Tom Brady there. You want everyone.
Yeah, but I have to
agree with Mac. It's just another example of the ineptitude of that organization. It's just not good. I mean, like you said, keep that in-house. Don't say anything. If you don't want to draw any attention to the possibility of a conflict of interest, you just want to just stay low. But he's probably not even thinking that. Like you said, he's just blurting out anything.
Yeah. And, I just mentioned young quarterbacks because we have a few minutes. And this draft is going to be interesting. Unless you're completely sold on Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, by my estimate, there are 8 teams that are going to need to draft a quarterback. Are going to really need 8 or 9 teams really going to need a quarterback in the worst way. There are a couple of teams like the Indianapolis Colts. If a good quarterback's available, I don't think they necessarily stay with Anthony Richardson, but they might. Okay, but this Abdul Carter, this edge rusher from Penn State, is a monster.
Yeah, he is.
Travis Hunter is going to be outstanding. Do you want to necessarily draft the Cam Ward, who might be so, when you can pair an Abdul Carter with Myles Garrett? That's insane.
But those guys are going to be gone. What are the Raiders, number 7?
Not the Raiders. I'm talking about any
team.
Even the Giants who go number 3.
Yeah.
But Giants won't have a chance at Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward if picks 1 and 2 take them. But what I'm saying, all of a sudden Abdul Carter, he emerges, and maybe I would take him ahead of Travis Hunter now. It's my feeling. It's like comparing Aaron Donald and Charles Woodson in a sense.
Yeah, and believe it or not, Aaron Donald wasn't even taken that high. What was he, like 14, 15, 16, somewhere?
Well, I'm giving an example, the type of player he could be. I mean, he's like a can't miss to me.
No, you're right. I agree with that. And it depends on what the combine and his pro day looks like. If he doesn't mess those up, he's top 5 pick. He's top 5.
If I were an owner, I would not allow anyone to go to the combines to scout players who would be taken in the early rounds. That's game film. I would tell them you could go to the combines beginning in the 4th round selections. If you're basing it on the first 3 rounds, you're not the people I want, in my organization.
He's, the Penn State defensive end's got an injured shoulder too. Is that going to affect whether he gets drafted high or not either? I mean, how significant is the injury? Is it an injury that can come up again and he has to have something done to it? We'll see. I don't even know if he's going to have it operated on or not. We'll have to see about that. Hunter is a non-miss. Hunter is the best kid out there, better than any defensive lineman. Better. I mean, the kid is just. I mean, he's Heisman Trophy winner. It's going to be a great defensive. He might be a shutdown defensive back, which every team wants. And he can return punts, and he can get on the offense too.
And they could use him, partly as a receiver as well.
Yeah.
For sure. He's guaranteed 1 or 2. He's going to be 1 or 2 without a doubt.
No. When you say 1 or 2, the first 2 teams, Tennessee and Cleveland, need quarterbacks. They might go with Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. Amongst the 2 of them, I really think Shedeur Sanders is going to be a good quarterback. I really do. He's going to be hard to pass up.
I agree.
I wouldn't want to pass Shador Sanders.
But I'm not gonna. I'm looking at. Can't miss, like Max said, in Travis Hunter, and like say for instance, if I'm Tennessee, do I draft a quarterback or do I take this player and maybe perhaps get a quarterback in free agency like a Kirk Cousins or somebody like that? You know, I mean, I think
out of here with Kirk Cousins. Don't waste time with these guys like Kirk Cousins.
I think he's better than what they got in the building.
You got to get your franchise quarterback of the future. You're wasting.
But is it in this draft? Is it in this draft? Is it in this draft?
On that question, folks, we got to get out of here.
That's fair
That's
enough.
an hour. Have a great day, folks.